Good morning. So we're going to go ahead and start. I'm going to give you an overview on active shooter. And I want to touch a little bit base historically of why we're at and how we got here, not only as a police department, but also some of the information that we give out. Because this is a very dynamic situation. It's something that, you know, we want to be able to prevent, but we know that it's difficult to prevent. But there are some things we can do to kind of help us. And it doesn't matter where you're at. The information you get here, you can take with you, whether you're at your workplace, whether you're out with your family. It's information that you can take with you and have it all the time, not just here at the temple. So we like to define active shooter. What's the difference between an active shooter and a terrorist and something else that goes on like this? It's really kind of fine, minute on there, but the federal government, I always like to tease my federal partners. They've kind of defined this for us. This is the definition that we use. An individual engaged or in killing, attempting to kill people in a confined populated area. So basically that means anywhere on that. The biggest thing I want you to let you know is that they have no criminal objective, okay? They don't want to rob you. They don't want anything from anybody else. They just want to hurt or kill people, and that's it. That's the bottom line. They are also so committed to this act that they're willing to give up their own life to commit this. So you're dealing with an individual who is highly committed to do this task, and again, they don't want anything from you. You can't reason with them, you can't give them money, you can't do anything like that to help them. They just want to hurt people. That's all they want to do. So where they've happened, pretty much everywhere. Schools, places of worship, workplace, public settings. But for law enforcement, what really brought this to the forefront for law enforcement were the schools. When it started happening to children, that's when we said, okay, you know, what are we doing? The biggest or one of the watershed events for law enforcement is the bottom slide here at Columbine High School in 1999. We had 13 people that were killed. And you can see 2,500, this person here, or these two individuals here wanted to kill over 500, to include public safety personnel that were responding there. These were two teenage boys that committed these acts over here. And what we found out in Columbine was that law enforcement's response to it back then was, okay, so we have a criminal element inside a building. We're going to surround the location. We're going to wait for the SWAT team to get here. Then we're going to negotiate. Well, there's no negotiating. While the police are outside setting a perimeter, containing the location, the people or the criminals inside were killing people. And they continued to do that until they started getting towards the end where they committed suicide on that. So you're talking about something that took several hours before the police ended up going inside, or the SWAT team ended up going inside. People that were shot ended up bleeding out and dying from those injuries, where if we would have responded quicker, then maybe we would have saved more lives. So what we learned from this throughout the nation is that law enforcement now will not wait on SWAT. It's called going direct to threat. So the first arriving officer makes a quick assessment. If he's hearing gunshots or anything like that, he's not waiting for anybody. They're just going to enter the building, and their primary objective is going to be to stop that shooter. And Javed's going to go over the police response with you so you have an understanding what to expect when the police do show up on a scene like this. These criminals or these individuals, they also watch the news. And what happens when something like this happens? We have 24-hour news channels. That's what's the main thing you see on TV. They bring in experts, they go over this thing, so they get information from watching the news. They also get information of previous people who've committed these atrocities, and they make their plan based off of that. So we move forward to Virginia Tech 2007. Now we have an individual here again, doesn't really want anything from anybody, but wants to kill as many people as he can. He knows that the police are responding to direct to threat. Heck, he might have even gone to a class similar to this to have an understanding of how the police respond. So he decides that he's going to chain the doors so the police can't get in. So while he's inside shooting and hurting people, the police are responding. They can't get in the school because this guy's chained the doors. So they had to figure out a way to get in. That delayed them from getting in there before they could stop him. Again, 32 dead, 20 wounded. As time went on, the schools knew about this, and everybody's going, okay, well, it's not going to happen. It's not. And statistically, when we look at this, it's probably never going to happen to you. But it's just like anything else, okay? When you're outside in a lightning storm, there's a possibility you can get struck by lightning, but most likely you can go through your entire life and you're not going to be hit by a lightning. We have fire drills at our schools and some of our businesses because if there's a fire, we want you to know how to react to it, how to respond to it, and what to do. You're probably never going to be in a fire in a building anymore in this day and age compared to back then when there were no building codes. But again, we still practice that because it might happen. We do tornado drills. Same thing. There's better probability of you being in a tornado, especially here in Indiana, than it would be you being involved in some kind of active shooter incident. So again, we train because there's a possibility of it happening, and if we're not training, then we don't understand what to do. Well, Newtown, Connecticut, Sandy Hook happened, and the schools, again, were pushing it off because we don't want to scare the kids, and I understand that completely. We don't want to create fear. We want to give you knowledge, because knowledge gives you a better understanding of what you need to do. When Sandy Hook happened, it was like, okay, we have to do something. The school said we have to do something to fix this because we can't go on ignoring what has happened in the past. So workplace shootings, again, when you see it, it happens. It happens for various reasons. We don't know what the trigger points are when it does happen. The top one there, 1986, this is an old one because you can see how far back these go. They just weren't coined active shooters back then. This individual here, he was fired because he wasn't a good employee. That was his trigger point on that. The accident signage systems, downturn in the economy, told him they was going to let him go. That was his turning point. And then we have the Edgewater technology. This individual had some kind of a mental illness, and his people that he worked with knew that he had something wrong with him because he talked about Nazis as it's happening in the present day. So he was living back in 1942 talking about Nazis as it was in present day. And the employees there, the people that worked with him, really didn't say anything to anybody because they were afraid, one, that they would be called the tattletale, and that he would get in trouble because of them. But they were fearful of reporting it. And again, that's something that we try to talk through and have an understanding that if there's something going on that's kind of disturbing to you or you hear something, what avenue do you have to report this? And people who report something shouldn't necessarily be, they need to be protected, but also the people that might have a problem, it's not like we want to get rid of you, we want to be able to help you. So what do businesses or schools have in place that can help someone through some issues they might be having? Because that's what they need. These individuals need help, and if we just ignore them, then something usually happens. It's not very good. Again, when you look at it, they happen everywhere. And, like I said, it could be a terrorist event. It could be a hate crime. When you look at these over here, Mumbai, again, 188, 10 armed people doing this. Again, they didn't care about anything but doing that job. Sikh temple, you had one individual here that came to the temple, and I will call it during a normal working day, if that makes any sense. There weren't services going on of any kind. It wasn't like they were having anything going on there. It was just the everyday working of that temple, the people that were in there. And again, white supremacist, loner, whatever triggered him to go that day to do that, I don't know. And then you have the church of 2015, and this one here is a little bit more recent on that, and to show you the audacity of some of these individuals. This individual came into this church, sat in a circle while they were doing a Bible study, and then pulled out a gun and started shooting them. So again, when you look at these individuals, they don't care. They do not care. They don't have any kind of feeling of any kind for human life. And that's what you need to understand the most about an active shooter. Again, the FBI here does a lot of statistical data collecting for us, and to let you know when you look at this, again, this is from 20 to 2013. The majority of the locations where they happen on that is commerce, so 45%, but when you look at houses of worship, you're looking at 3-4% of those incidents that happened between 2000 and 2013. So when it comes to places of worship, it's a little bit smaller, but again, a lot of us are outside when we shop, a lot of us go to school, and again, a lot of us are fit in this pie chart somewhere throughout the day. Do you know this person? You might not know him. And again, that's all this tells you is that, again, it might be someone you work with, it might be someone you don't work with, but you can see the orange piece over there, 26% of these incidents, the individual did not know you at all, had no connection with you whatsoever. And then again, we go frequency of attacks. The other big thing I want to tell you when you look at it, the two big ones I want you to see is applied force and suicide or suicide attempt. Those are the two biggest ways these things end. In other words, these individuals either will kill themselves afterwards or somebody has to stop them. Those are the two primary ways that these end. You can see where some of them have given up, some of them have tried to flee, not very many though. So who are they? So the one big thing here, especially when I do this, because it's kind of all-encompassing for me for schools and businesses, is that back in like 1998, again, the federal government, I love these guys, and you wonder why they have acronyms, is because some of the places that you work have such long names, and I always have to read this one off. The Critical Incident Response Group for the National Center of Analysis of Violent Crimes at the FBI Academy in Quantico. They collect data, and they were seeing an uptick in school shootings. So they went at the time to the Attorney General, Janet Reno, and they said, hey, we're getting all this information in about this violence happening in schools. We need to write a paper on this to kind of give administrators an idea of what you can look for to help prevent this from happening, because that's what we want to do. That's our goal, is to prevent it from happening. And a school setting is going to be a little bit different than, let's say, someplace out in the open that this might happen. Again, but they wanted to get that information out to school teachers and let them know. This didn't come out until after Columbine, but again, it was something that they knew about and they were trying to get ahead of it, but again, it happened before we could. And then you also have the U.S. Department of Education along with the U.S. Secret Service that put out a white paper on how educators. These two documents are still online, lengthy reads on that, but it kind of goes over a little bit what I'm going to go over here. Just because you see some of these indicators doesn't mean that people are going to be active killers or active shooters, but it's some of the things that we look at to kind of say, hey, what's going on here? Because when we look back at these incidents and we go, okay, let's find out what this person was doing before he started these shootings, you see little clues that are there that if somebody would have picked up on it, then maybe we would have been able to find out or help this person get through what they were going through and stop this from happening. When you look at age groups, it goes across the board. So we've had them as young as 13 years old. Could you imagine that? Yes, sir.
Sir, we really love to hear you, but looks like we need to tell the people outside to keep quiet because there's continuous disturbance from the kids and even from adults.
That's right.
Maybe I would request the audience.
I did.
We tried. Thank you. We're going to continue to try.
Okay, so, and I'll try to speak a little louder. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So when we look at it, so at a very young age, it's happened, all the way up into the older years over here. But again, it doesn't matter, age group, we know that it's happened. The one thing I will tell you is that the majority of these atrocities are committed by men. Men are the majority of the people that commit these atrocities here. So what do we look for? And again, this is something to bring with you. It's probably nothing here to worry about here at the temple, but let's say you're out of work or something like that. have an understanding that unresolved conflicts, depression, severe mood swings, all these might be an indicator of there might be something going on. But again, understanding that life does happen. So somebody might have had a death in the family that you don't know about, and they're depressed. That's natural, okay? But we're talking about something that's prolonged, something that this person here used to come in every day, happy-go-lucky, and now all of a sudden we see him and he's talking about guns. He's going, man, you know what? This gun right here can kill more people than anybody ever realized it could do. You know, it's things like that are a little bit of clues that are going, there's something going on here, and what can I do to kind of help support this? And there's some more indicators here when you look at it, again, that might be able to be indicators that this person here is going through some kind of problems. So when I try to break it down, because this is kind of a big monster to wrap your arms around a little bit, how you go about figuring it out. So how would you go about figuring out here at the temple what to do? So there's 3 areas that I kind of focus on. Procedures. Procedures are basically, what are we going to do? We're going to have somebody greeting somebody at the door. Are we going to have a police officer out in the parking lot? Are we going to tell the people here at the temple what to do if something like that happens? Doesn't matter what it is. It could be a fire. It could be a severe weather. What are we going to do when we have these things? Well, these are procedures that really don't cost money so much, but it's what are we going to do if something like this happens? And it's always good to have your plan written out, and it doesn't have to be a perfect plan because there really isn't anything that's perfect, but you have to have a basic understanding of this is what we want to do. Then you go to systems. That usually costs money because that's usually something physical. You know, we're going to have barbed wire fencing over here. We're going to put cameras outside. We're going to lock the doors and put them on electronic buzzard, so you have to hit the intercom and I have to say, who are you, what's your business here, then I let you in. It's things like that are systems. And then training. How are we going to get this training? Do we have to train everybody? Is it good enough just to give a presentation and have an understanding? Is it good to put a map up here and go, hey, in the temple here, I know you all come to this area of the temple, but there are exits and other places to get out of the temple if you go this way, or there's other places in the temple in here where you can hide. So again, start with a realistic assessment of your location. And this is nothing, this is not rocket science. It's like, okay, we're going to see what we have in place already. So, you know, we have fencing. We have one way in or one way out on that. So how else can we get out of here? Can somebody come in here? Yeah, they can. Okay. We know that. We understand what we have here. And you kind of go through what your strengths and your weaknesses are of your area. Identifying your evacuation routes. The majority of them, because of fire codes, you're going to have exit signs posted over the doors to let people know how to get out. So again, this is very, very simple, but that's the way it has to be. If it's too complicated, during a stressful situation, you're not going to be able to remember what to do. Designated shelters. Where is a good place to hide in the temple? Is there a good place to hide? If there isn't, we need to know that. And again, team leaders. Do we have people that come to the church regularly or the temple regularly, they're involved in the temple, and they go, hey, would you like to be part of this planning as a team leader? If something does happen, this will be your responsibility. Just something to get in there. And I always preach to get with law enforcement because we are the ones that are going to be not only responding, but we're also the ones that can help you. You have a great resource here with Javed on that. Not only is he a member here, but he's actually a police officer, so he's going to be able to bring that knowledge to the table and help you out with some other things. Who's the point of contact? You know, a lot of times decisions need to be made, but they have to be through the point of contact. Who is that? It's good for us to know, good for us to be identified. And again, reporting unusual behavior, that doesn't so much go here. Do you have a command station? It's not big enough for one of those, but where would you have something if something did happen to where you could start notifying members of the temple? And what are your notification procedures? Who needs to be notified? So again, depending on the location and how big it is, and some of this is not going to pertain here, The biggest thing here is communication. How do we let somebody know that something is going to be going on? Whether it's a weather event, whether we have a suspicious person out in the parking lot, something like that. How do we get that information back to people that need to know? And so that's one of those areas that we need to look at. Training, though, training is the biggest one for me, and like I said, it doesn't have to involve everybody, and that's going to really be left up to you. The biggest thing is that you do have to have it. If you don't do this training, if you don't participate in this and practice it, then what happens is that you'll end up getting in a situation to where panic kind of sets in a little bit, and you really won't know what to do because you'll be under stress on that. So what training does, it kind of helps you work through that a little bit. And there's some examples here that I throw up over here, and I won't go over this one too much. But this guy right here, Rick Rascola, I always like mentioning him. This individual here, Vietnam veteran, worked in Intel. He ended up getting well, he was a teacher first after he got out of the military, then he became vice president of security for Stanley Morgan and Dean Witter. And what he did was basically what I just showed you as far as procedures go. He did a site assessment. So World Trade Center, he had 22 floors on the World Trade Center. That was his company and his responsibility. So he went around there, and what did he find out? He found out that, hey, easy access point for us here is somebody driving into the parking area underneath the building. There's nobody here that will see you or confront you or challenge you or say, hey, what are you doing here? And somebody could drive a truck underneath here with a bomb and try to blow up the building. He brought this to his bosses. His bosses brought it to, who at the time was the New York Port Authority and the New Jersey Port Authority, who had kind of dual jurisdiction over that building. And they said, don't worry about it, we got this. Well, what happened? Somebody took a Ryder truck and tried to blow up the building. Several people were killed and injured on that, but after that his bosses said, you know what, whatever you want to do, we're going to do it. So every 3 months he had a drill. Every 3 months they evacuated 22 floors of that building. Didn't matter who you were, if you were a visitor, didn't matter if they had some kind of important meeting going on. If he held that drill, everybody participated in that drill. So when 9/11 happened and the planes struck the towers, he was able to get everybody out of there in his company. Nobody died at Stanley Morgan or Dean Witter. They all survived that because Rick trained them how to get out of that building. They found out, hey, these are some of the nuances we have to be aware of going down the stairs and something like that, something that people never did before. Unfortunately, Rick lost his life because he went back inside to try to help others get out. But he, very good man to try to help other people out. So train your plan, again, including public safety in it, include your staff in your planning. So it's not just one person saying this is what we're going to do. Get people involved that have an understanding of some of the other things that go on in the temple, so that way they can give you their input. And also you might be able to see some gaps that are there that, hey, we can't do this because this is the reason why. On that. So, and to give you an example, and I'm just, you know, part of this is what I do, but I look at it and I'm going, okay, if something does happen now and we have to get out of this building immediately, none of us have shoes on. Okay, what kind of problem is that going to cause us if it's freezing cold outside? Is there something else we can do to help once we get out there to help mitigate this? You know what I'm saying? So it's something like that we need to think about before it happens, because when it does happen, we're not going to have time to think about it or plan about it. So having an idea of where are we going to go if something like that happens here, you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but you do have another church that's over here. Maybe we can form a relationship with them and go, hey, if something happens here, can we come over there? If something happens over there, can we come over here? It's these things that you need to look at prior to something happening, just to have an idea of what you can do to be able to survive this incident. Again, they're unpredictable. You have to have a mindset on this, and again, training is the thing that kind of gets you through that. You'll hear law enforcement officers throughout the nation tell you that I basically, fell back on my training. It was automatic. I didn't have to think about it. And the reason why is physiologically, when I talk about physiologically, is every human being goes through the same thing in a life-threatening situation or when we become startled. So to give you an example, if we would hear a really, really loud noise right now, we're going to be startled, and we're going to look at the direction of wherever that noise is coming from. So that right there is our body trying to figure out what's going on. Our brain will try to tell us, hey, this is what you've gone through in life, and this is what it probably is. So depending on where you're at, if you're in a big location and you hear a loud noise, you might think, oh, it's a firecracker or someone dropped something really loud. But if you continue to hear that noise repeatedly over and over again, the same noise, it might be gunshots. You don't know, because maybe you've never heard gunshots before, except on TV. But you're going, okay, there's something going on here. Now you're hearing screaming, and now you're becoming panicked now, because now you're going, is this really happening? Is there something actually going on right now? So now, if you've trained, you're going to respond the way you were trained. If not, you're going to start looking around to see what other people are doing. And you'll see this if you look at any newsreels of any active shooters, and to give you the last one, Las Vegas, where you've seen people, some people were trying to hide, some people were trying to run and get out of the way, but they didn't know where they were going. They came in one way, and that's the only way they knew how to go back out. And that brings me back to another area. They had a bar that had this concert. There was a small venue, not very big, but they had pyrotechnics inside the building. And the pyrotechnics ended up catching some of the material on fire. And it started getting a lot of smoke, and then people started realizing, oh my gosh, there's actually a fire here, we need to get out. There's exit signs all along this area where they're at to get them out of there, but because everybody came in one way, everybody tried to get out the same way. So there's video of this where people are jammed inside the door, all of them trying to get out at one time, jammed inside the door where nobody can get out because people were just crushed in that door and they couldn't get out of there. But because they didn't pay attention to their surroundings and see there's other exits, a lot of them perished because they couldn't get out of the building. The smoke overtook them, and that was it. So again, training and having understanding how to get out of a place, not only the way you come in. It's a basic plan on that, and we kind of call it run, hide, and fight here. There's other verbiage that we can use depending, what you want. Avert, defend, act, evacuate, hide out, take action, whatever you want to call it. Run is the number one thing. I know it's common sense, but have an understanding. Get away. That's the best course of action, is to get away. Where are you going to go to, though? I know when I talk to a lot of schools, they say, well, we're going to form out here in the parking lot. Well, that's too close. You want to get away. And that means where you're not in direct line of sight of where this thing is happening at on that. Where's the threat coming from before you start running? You don't want to run towards the threat. And again, don't hesitate. You might have belongings that you need. Again, we talked about shoes right now. We're not going to run over there and get our shoes. We're just going to get out of the building. We're going to worry about that later. Just remember, get out, safe place, then call 911. I will tell you one thing about 911 in Marion County. I don't know about the other counties, but in Marion County, because the call volume is so large, and a lot of people, when they don't have an emergency, they don't look up the non-emergency number, so they say, okay, I'm just going to dial 911 because that's the one I remember. We get a lot of calls that aren't emergency calls also that come into the 911 center. The 911 center is first come, first serve, and you're put in a phone tree. They don't know whose emergency is more of a priority than somebody else's until they pick up the phone. So they get stacked up, and you'll get a response saying, hey, stay on the line, do not hang up. We'll get with you shortly, to something to that extent. do not hang up. If you hang up, you go to the end of the line when you call back again. So calling back in is not gonna, you're not gonna get, oh, I'm lucky, they're gonna pick me up now. Stay on the line until somebody picks up on that. What if you can't get out? And again, you might have to hide first before you can get out. Where can you hide inside the temple that you know is a good place to hide? If there's no good place to hide, what can I do to hide myself as I'm moving out of here? You know, can I crawl by the stage while they're standing over there where they won't be able to see me over here, and then as he walks back that way, I can go out this exit. So it's things like that to keep in mind. If you do have a place to hide, can you lock the door from the inside without using the key? Do you have to have a key to lock the door? Is it a solid wooden door, or is it a door that's an interior door that's basically made out of a couple of thin sheets of plywood or something like that that really wouldn't keep anybody out? Do you have other windows you can get out other than just the doors? Again, if you have to hide, try to remain quiet. It's kind of difficult sometimes, but be prepared. If you can, call 911 or text it. Do it. If you can't, you know, kind of bide your time as best you can, but always be ready to either get out of there after it's gone by or to take action. This is probably the most difficult part for me to teach because really, human beings aren't really violent right now. You know, I mean, we're not here always trying to fight somebody or something like that. But fighting is one of the things that you have to take into account, that if it does happen and I can't get away, what am I going to do? Because this person is not going to stop shooting. The people at the church that I was talking about earlier, he was sitting with them in a circle. Some of them were pleading for their lives. He just shot them anyway. It doesn't matter. So, what can you do? What is there that I can do to help? And there are no rules. Have an understanding there are no rules when it comes to you defending your life or somebody else's life. So if that means you have a pencil in your hand and you stab him in the eye, that's what you do. And the thing is, that's going to redirect his attention to his eye and maybe gives you the opportunity to get away. So I'm not telling you have to kill this person. What I'm telling you is that you have the right to defend yourself and everybody else. Also have an understanding that 2 against 1, those are really good odds. I know we see a lot of it on TV, and Javed here will probably tell you, hey, you know, I'm a master in martial arts, but if 2 of you started getting on him, he's going to have a very, very hard time beating both of you on that. 2 against 1, without any training, is still a very difficult fight. Gives you the opportunity to maybe hurt him enough, or disable him enough, or put him on the ground and hold him on the ground. It gives you that opportunity to be able to do something other than just letting him shoot you, because that's what he's going to do. The other thing is having a basic understanding of first aid. Basic understanding, and then this is really all you need. You don't need to be an EMT, you don't need to be a paramedic or a doctor. Is that if you're in a location and the shooting is stopped, maybe the shooter killed himself, maybe the police came in here and stopped him, and you have somebody next to you that's bleeding. Where are they bleeding from? If they're bleeding from the leg or the arm, let's stop that bleeding. A tourniquet is usually the best thing to use, you know, and again, you need a little bit of training, but not a lot. It's something that's it's even easier than CPR. Okay, CPR, you have to remember, okay, I got to push at least this deep, and I got to make sure I'm doing this many beats a minute on that. This is a lot easier. It's like, okay, there's a wound on the extremity. Let's get that tourniquet above that wound and make it as tight as we can until the bleeding stops. Maybe I'll put pressure on where the bullet hole is on that. Same way with if it hits in the chest or the torso. What can I do? Do I have something I can grab? Maybe some of these curtains right here and just shove it into that wound to try to stop that bleeding, because the majority of gunshot wounds are survivable. The biggest thing for us is that, and if you want to talk to any doctors or paramedics that we have that take these gunshot wound runs that we have here in the city, they'll let you know if we can stop that bleeding, that person has a very, very good probability of surviving. So keep that in mind, that just some really fundamental first aid can also help go a long way. We're also tag teaming this, so Javed, I think you're up next. Here, talk about police response.